One of the challenges of this movie was that the script is so dialogue-driven that we had to let the dialogue be the hero of the movie, and therefore we kind of took an unassuming approach to the visual style.
We talked about it initially like not really having a look. You know, I mean, part of, you know, the hardship of working at Harvard, because they weren't very helpful. To say they weren't very helpful would be giving them actually a great. They sandbagged us, and they were atrocious as far as what they would allow us to do. So we ended up not being able to do anything at Harvard, and part of the reality of what we were faced with to shoot was it's going to be a lot of what's there, because we can't bring in 20Ks and we can't do. So even when we went to Baltimore, we ended up going to Johns Hopkins and shooting there. We just tried to keep it minimal, you know. It was really a movie about kids' faces.
Visually, we lit it to keep you intrigued by the textures of what that experience was. Harvard is entirely old 300, 200-year-old buildings with dark wood, practical lights, and so it's kind of different than a modern college, and so we wanted that environment to come through. You
know, we looked at a lot of location photographs of you know, Kirkland and the different areas in the Harvard Quad, and kind of went, you know, that looks pretty good, that looks pretty real. You know, we don't want to try to do the conformist, because that's inappropriate. So we're just trying to keep it appropriate and just go, well, what desk lamp would they use? I mean, one of the great things about shooting digitally is that a desk lamp can actually function as a piece of set dressing, and it can provide a key light. So it's both functional and it becomes part of your look. I mean, I don't think there's one setup in this movie that took more than 20 minutes, 25 minutes to light. You know, it was very simple. Hey, Jeff?
Yeah, David?
At the end, when Jesse leans out, you can make a little bit.
You don't have to leave so much room on that. Because he's going to talk to the waitress. So Jesse's going to lean back on, you should come live with us. And then, yeah. Here we go.
You know, you got a 5-page scene where a guy's in a club and he's trying to seduce another character. And you could put on a Steadicam and you could spin around that table and you could do a lot of stuff. But really the important thing is to watch Jesse Eisenberg's face as he listens, because the listening is more than half of that conversation. It's what he misses when he says, is that a parable? And then, you know, where he gets his hooks in and where he starts to really grapple with what it is that Sean's saying above the din of this, you know, disco music. That's the scene. You know, what makes it cinematic is the performances, what their eyes are doing as they're trying to grasp what the other person is telling them, or how quickly Jesse Eisenberg takes on this information and moves to the next subject, and things that he has trouble with and the things that he gets immediately. And so that for me was, you know, when it comes to the visualization of it, it was kind of like, let's shoot it. It's a character drama, and it's all about whether or not I believe the behavior. Cut.
All right, cool. So let's minimize what we're going to test over here. Like, let's go through this, and some of the shit can just go away forever.
We chose to shoot on the Red 1 with the new Mysterium X chip, basically because David has always been very progressive in the HD world and new technology. And this chip came about exactly when we were starting production or pre-production on the show. So doing experiments and testing different camera packages. As you know, he shot Benjamin Button on the Viper as well as Zodiac. And this camera allowed a much greater range and color spectrum, if you will, and its latitude was increased quite a bit, and so the highlights didn't quite clip as easily as the previous versions of this camera and all other HD systems. So that was primarily the reason we chose this system.
Okay, come walking forward.
Come towards me and walk to.
Cut it, thank you. Okay, get the HDR.
Hello. Listen, something's happened.
Depth of field for an HD shoot has always been an interesting dilemma to overcome. I mean, as a filmmaker and a storyteller such as David, depth of field is one more tool that you allow yourself to utilize when you want people to look at certain places at certain times. So because the HD world actually affords more depth of field, it's a battle all the time to keep that option open as a filmmaking technique. So what we did is we used a series of prime lenses called master primes. They open up to 1.3, And unfortunately for the camera assistants, it made their lives very, very difficult. But we shot the entire film at 1.3. And when we did go outside, we used massive amounts of neutral density filters to keep the exposure wide open, allowing yourself, you know, still the depth of field choice.
You guys mind walking around for us so nothing falls down on you? That'd be great.
Harvard is not extremely film friendly. I think they've gotten less so over the years. So we had to be careful about what we could shoot and not shoot. And there's iconic archways that are part of Harvard Square. And the university owns most of the property around there. So we had one building top that was a private building that we were allowed to shoot an overhead from. And what we did is we used 3 red cameras side by side to create a panoramic. And in that panoramic, it allowed Fincher to tile those 3 images together and then do a pan and scan through it to create a move that we normally couldn't create. We could have done it traditional and used a motion control rig of that, but to get a motion control rig 10 stories up on an old building would have been quite a challenge. So this allowed him to go back later, put in streetlights, put in buildings in the distance, adjust things, and then move as he wanted to and push in and tilt down. Knowing that we couldn't use the Harvard property at all, the archways were black and silhouetted and didn't stand out. And they're the oldest archways at the university and very, you know, iconic of Harvard. So David had a fantastic idea about getting a mime to walk in with a battery pack light that we created and create a mime situation inside the arches exactly when we were shooting. So the thought was that if security came or a police officer came, that by the time you get a mime to stop miming, you know, we had accomplished our shot. So it's kind of funny in a movie of this scale that you're still trying to do things that you did in film school to get the look that you want.